What's up, y'all? Welcome back. Fire and Operate. We are buying and building a portfolio of niche vertical B2B SaaS firms. We're doing it in public to hopefully inspire y'all that this is kind of an interesting path.
Hell yeah.
To help founders as you navigate your world and to have some fun along the way. Kjael, how we doing?
I'm doing amazing, baby. It's been a great week. I know we're going into November. October starting off Q4. By the time you get to the end of October, it always feels like you're just sliding right into November. There's something about October and that energy, but we're getting it done. I'm feeling good.
No doubt. Good to hear it, dude. Topic du jour, gotchas or hurdles or things you did not expect that will kill your sales velocity assumptions, your forecast, your growth plan, however you want to think about it. And obviously kind of the lead in here is like, hey, we looked at benchmark sales velocity metrics. We thought we could get to this many opportunities a month and a win rate of this and an average contract value of that and a sales cycle timeline of this. And if we do all that, we're going to punch at this revenue and we're going to triple the business in a couple years and everybody's happy. And then all of a sudden you get in there and
you think about the gotchas?
And it's like, whoa, God, it turns out that all these buyers are super technical and they want to see a proof of concept. And that's, 90-day add-on to our cycle time, which is just killing sales velocity. Or it turns out that the incumbent that we're disrupting or displacing is deeply integrated into all these other systems, and everybody's terrified to touch it because they think it'll break the broader technology infrastructure. There's a ton of seasonality. My God, it turns out people only buy stuff in Q4. So these are the gotchas that will just kind of kill. Yeah, right. Yeah, totally. And those are just a few examples, but it's like, oh man, we came in, we thought we had pretty rational assumptions that we were kind of building our growth model around. And that's kind of as an outside party thinking about what you do with the business when you take ownership, or internally, we underpinned our sales forecast on this thing, and that forecast foots to the budget, and the budget foots to all these different things that you're spending money on. It's like, oh God, if a couple of months like that tick by and everybody's staring at you like you missed, you idiot, and it feels terrible.
And this is why growing up, we learned in managing our personal finance, don't spend money before you make it.
Yes. Amen. We are going to go through. So that's the context. So it's kind of like, all right, let's establish just a general point of view on what the gotchas are, because just assume that there's at least one or two. And then the challenge is, what can you figure out as an external party? Because obviously you can get in there and after 90 days in the trenches, you'll be like, there's that thing is here, shit. But for the majority of us, it's kind of, how do we formalize a point of view or stress test our assumptions and kind of run them through these gates, or run them through these gotchas, these hurdles, and kind of check each one. So I'll read through the high level version. So we've got, just to kind of give you a table of contents for today. So we've got seasonal buying cycles, incumbent solution entrenchment. There's got to be a simpler way to say that. Complex stakeholder engagement, so big buying committees. Technical validation, that's back into the proof of concept stuff. Budget constraints and financial scrutiny, that's less a gotcha, that's always there, but it's good to be in there. Customer education and awareness is a very abstract one, but it's one to it's kind of like where in like a simple, well, we'll get into it. Customer education and awareness, we touched on that one. Dependence on strategic partnerships, that is a very common gotcha. Regulatory or compliance barriers, less common, and that's why it's often overlooked. Internal sales process complexity. And then lastly is customer resource constraints for implementation. So those are the headlines. So and the hope here is like, this is the thing, and here are some diligence activities that you can do to sniff it out. So starting with seasonal buying cycles, and this is basically, it's anchored around, and I would say the more enterprisey you go, the more likely these gotchas are there. So if you're going hard at SMB and mid-market, you probably can get through this exercise pretty quickly. If you're kind of indexing towards enterprise, you got to spend a lot of time here. But seasonal buying cycles are pretty straightforward. Usually it's footed to budget cycles, or there can be some weird dependencies too. Like at ADP in kind of the payroll and human capital management business, everybody waits for the tax year to reset before they change a tool.
And that is January or February sometimes.
Yeah. So it's back to like, nobody switches in the middle of the year because they have to backdate and true up their taxes, and it just becomes a big burden. So that's an example of that. And this one, in terms of diligence activities, pretty straightforward. So you jump into revenues as a starting point and just look for spikes. And you want to go back as far as you can. So ideally, you have 2 years that you can compare. And if you just look at 1 year, that's a start. And it's like, oh, there's spikes at the end of the quarters, or, oh, this is normally distributed, or, whatever the case may be, but you want to compare like time periods. So this year versus last year versus the year before, if you can, and that'll help you there. And then look at the pipeline. So you want to comment on this?
Yeah, I was gonna say in terms of like the seasonal buying cycle, like started off with like that energy about October. Q4 is either a quiet season or a busy season for you, and especially if you're selling like enterprise sales tools. Most times, a lot of these larger companies, they'll hire their sales teams in cohorts because they're coming from like the McKinseys and like these top Ivy Leagues. They'll hire them in cohorts through like the summer, slightly into the fall. It's like that seasonal buying cycle for sales enterprise software can sometimes come in spring. You try to hit it in the fall, it's like, hey, don't talk to me until next spring. Like our budget's already shot. We've got people in like bodies in seats. Like we're not even thinking about buying tools. Dude, it's October. Don't talk to me. So now you got these AEs just sending out emails, just building relationships all for a few months to try to push
Close
something
everything.
through after the new year. Yeah.
Yeah. Or the old saying is Q4, dump the truck.
Yeah.
Dump the truck. It's like I've spent
You've
3
been
quarters building.
sandbagging all year. Now you got to
Yeah.
dump it.
I've been building pipeline for 3 years, and here comes Q4. We better close some business.
Yeah.
So in the pipeline, it's just like opportunity creation is a leading indicator. So just look for concentration of opportunity creation in certain months. And then lastly is customer interviews. Obviously, if you're an external party, this isn't really available to you, but you can do, primary market research, hit up the persona at the company and talk to them about how they buy stuff straight up. All right, incumbent solution entrenchment. So this is back to like, God, what would be a good example of this? Like, let's say outreach or something, or like some type of outbound automation.
You could say
They're like,
CRM, literally a CRM.
Well, CRM is like as sticky as it gets, but like,
Yeah,
let's just say it's like this thing connects intimately with the CRM. And so, but it sucks. And so the front end users, in this example, the salespeople, so this is an outbound tool that sends automated emails. It's probably why your inbox is as noisy as it is. And it's like, they don't really, and the users, you've got like a person, your champions in there. He's like, we love this. This is a huge top grade for us. He brings it to the exec team, like, nah, we're not touching this. If this integration breaks, it's going to throw off all our record keeping in our CRM. And it's got to be a huge gain for us to make that change. And so you're all jazzed. You've got the deal forecasted, and then you just hit a brick wall out of nowhere. So that's one of those suggested diligence activities. Customer feedback, like, yes. And that's like always there. If you can talk to customers, do it. And that's available to you. Also, it speaks to the kind of the value of like primary. It's like alpha sites and GLG and all these expert networks are so useful because a quick point of view from somebody who's been in the market for a while is worth its weight in gold. Win-loss analysis is another one. And this, you're kind of dependent on the record keeping of the business. Email dialogue is good. You can scrape the emails and look for patterns in the event that the win-loss analysis isn't populated or the record keeping sucks. And it's like, we wanted to switch, but we're afraid it's going to break everything. And it's like, okay, cool. You got some type of entrenchment type dynamic that's working against you. And then if there is a sales team, you can interview them as well. Complex stakeholder landscape. So again, more enterprisey, more people at the table. And the challenge is you got to get them all to agree on what they want to eat for lunch, aka build consensus around any kind of decision. And you just want to be eyes wide around the usual suspects that are at the table. Like, who's the decision-making committee, the DMC? What are their respective kind of motivations, etc. And then you just want a clear point of view here, but you should probably assume always that there's going to be a buying committee. They have their respective roles. It's like, all right, we've got the end user, the decision maker, the financial buyer, and the executive. And then maybe there's like procurement or IT or something. So you just want to be clear on who those people are. If the record keeping is solid in the CRM, you can look at deal velocity and you can look at cycle time and just you're looking for variance there. So it's like and that should be normally distributed where it's like, we mostly sell to mid-market and it's an 8-week sales cycle. Then we sell to enterprise and it's a 90-day sales cycle or something like that. That's that. The customer journey audit's another way to kind of think about it too, but that's pretty straightforward for that one. Technical validation delays. So these are kind of gone. Honestly, like I remember proof of concepts being way, way more and like you just expected, honestly. If in like some data products they are. But anyway, this is back to like, hey, we want to buy it. We need to use it for 90 days before we commit to a thing. And it's like a date to marry model. And the challenge for a SaaS leader or an operator is you have to incur those costs to basically get the customer activated before a commitment to revenue. So it can get you upside down cash flow pretty quickly. And you just want to fight proof of concepts like hell. Like, just God bless, just don't do it, or make it like where it's they sign the contract and it's contingent on shit absolutely hitting the fan. So it's like, you signed it. If this thing explodes, you can get out. But it's not like if this goes well, you'll sign it. Not sure if I have any more commentary there. Anything to add there, Kev?
It just reminds me of like data companies, for example. You sign up with a Zoom info. It's like, hey, you're going to pay this because you already know the kind of data that you're getting. The only time you get something back or you can exit is if like, hey, all the data is just back. You send an email and all the emails bounce. Then we'll do something about it. But you can't get the data, have it, and then say, well, let me get part of my money back because I haven't used the data yet. It doesn't work like that.
Totally. And I guess another kind of stakeholder group for this one is the product management and engineering teams. So it's like, or customer success is probably even before that. It's like, what does implementation look like? Okay. And it's like, oh shit, is like a 4-week proof of concept in all of these deals. And you can engineer your way out of that and just fine tune the sales process. But there could be such inertia on the buying side where it's like, no, this is totally standard. This is how they buy this stuff. You got to accommodate it. But ideally it's like, no, we can tune up the sales process such that we don't need to introduce this proof of concept thing. Budget constraints. I mean, it's like, yeah, duh. But this could be, and there could be, the gotcha is like back to win-loss analysis. I mean, win-loss analysis is so productive, and that's why back to record keeping is so productive. But it's like, if budget is a concern, and like, I think a big thing to figure out is like, and this is back to like product penetration, or I guess product maturity, where it's like, is the market aware that this is a problem? Have they currently solved for it, and have they established budget for it? That's probably the more productive exercise, because it's a way different ask to be like, hey, point your dollars that are already allocated or like bucketed for this thing at this thing, versus you need to find space in the budget to buy this thing. And that's a way harder lift, and the value prop and the ROI's got to slap pretty good.
Yeah.
But if you're losing all the
expenses for that.
Totally. But if you're losing all these deals to budget, then your pricing's broken, or there's a lot of things that you need to kind of think through there. And that's pretty straightforward. So I think
pricing, your process could be a variety of things, but you got to audit the entire journey to understand where the gaps are, where your funnel's leaking.
For sure. Because everybody has budget for something that generates a positive ROI.
Exactly. Exactly. So like, I hate those conversations like, we don't have budget. No, you have budget when it matters.
Yeah, or you have budget for the stuff you believe in, so we're doing something wrong. And then this kind of dovetails into customer education and awareness. So this is like back to like, where is the product or the category in terms of maturity? And like, it's like, yeah, everyone has a CRM. We've 30% of our operating budget is for CRM. Duh. And it's like, oh, but there's this kind of new thing. So just know that the headline here is it takes time and money to educate the market. So you want to understand, are they familiar with the terminology? Is there terminology that you're introducing? And on the other side of the coin, educating the market is early in the adoption curve, and that's where you can cross the chasm and take markets pretty quick, but you got to invest on the front end. So anyway, that's kind of back to like, does the market speak of our thing? No? Shit. All right, we got some work to do, and that's going to be a long that's content, top of funnel. That's just getting the world to see getting your market to see the world a certain way. And that, again, takes time and money.
Yep. Got to find a fit.
Dependence on strategic partnerships or channel sales. So this is a really good gotcha, where it's like, there's a consultant involved in every deal. And it can create a lot of opportunity. And this is back to a concept of like product channel fit, where the opportunity is like, oh my God, we've been kicking down doors, going direct outbound. And it turns out that these consultants are the ones that are influencing all these buying decisions. It's like, okay, then let's recalibrate and fixate on the consultant community. Let's educate the shit out of them. Ideally, you can incentivize them as well. And now your go-to-market is a channel partnership strategy, and you can just kind of course correct accordingly.
Yeah, but then I would say, like, one could argue, leaning back into single points of failure, if you do like a channel sales analysis and you realize all the revenue is coming from one main channel, at what point is there diminishing returns on that one channel before you need to spin up another one? You know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah, totally. And it can break your economics too,
right?
Where it's like, cool, or we have to break off this consultant 20% of revenue, and then it's like, oh God, this thing isn't profitable at all.
Too much leverage.
It's like, oh God, we don't make any money if we go with your partners.
Right.
So those are and I would just say too, is like shifting to a partner-based strategy requires a whole different human. So it's a very different kind of human capital personnel strategy, because that thing is way more like enablement, coaching, constant nurturing, education, those people feel more like customer success humans. And it's like a biz dev profile. So it's less direct sales going hard and more like managing a community, making sure that you equipping them the best you can to sell on your behalf. And that's just a different skill set. So that's one, I guess, thing to call out.
I was going to throw in a funny example there of having a partner in a channel sale realm hurting your actual revenue. McDonald's, they just settled their lawsuit with the owners of the ice cream maker machine. You know how you always order like a shake or the McFlurry.
McFlurry, baby, yeah.
And you can't because the machine is always down. Turns out the company that sold that machine to them had it in their clause where only their mechanics can manage that machine. And you always have to go through this long, drawn-out process where it took months to get someone out, and they could charge them whatever they want when they come to fix it. So McDonald's just got out of that contract where they can go to other, outsource the work, basically go to other vendors. Now they're going to try to boost that revenue back up. Turns out it lost them billions.
Yeah.
Billions.
Totally. Oh God. And like the more you're like white labeling software, if you are, that stuff's all there and weird.
It's insane. Just ice cream machines.
And I mean, like in the simplest sense, you're like, what's the weird thing here that is going to blow up? That is going to blow up our thing. And there's got to be one. Like, what's the weirdness here that we fit just in terms of how this market functions, how they buy stuff, who influences what they think they should buy. That's really what you're trying to figure out in the most macro sense. And then I guess, if you're slanging burgers, it's like, wait, who has the maintenance contracts for our grill? Because our grill's down and business just halted, and all our margin is in the McFlurries. So damn it, this is bad. All right, regulatory or compliance related sales barriers. Be woke. Like the old one that got everybody was SOC 2 compliant. It was like when SOC 2, just like compliance, and it was like, oh my God, it costs X to get that level of compliance. So it killed startups' ability to compete, because it was like, yeah, these incumbents, these big titans, they've got all the compliance certificates and blah, blah, blah. And it was like the IT persona would come in at the 11th hour and it's like, well, I'm assuming you have XYZ compliance certificate. And you're like, shit, I don't think we do. And it's like, well, it turns out no one's going to buy the thing if you don't have that thing. So that's an example. And obviously business model wise, if you're playing in a regulated category, that stuff's going to be all over your mind and all up and down your diligence activities. Okay, getting towards the back of rounding towards home here. All right, so we got two left: internal sales process complexity and then customer resource constraints for implementation. Internal sales process complexity, most of this is a function of approval, or like just speaking from experience, like figure out, or it's like, what percentage of deals are the terms redlined? And it's like every single deal, their legal team redlines our terms and conditions. And it's like, okay, that's totally blowing up cycle time. Like we probably need to tune our terms and standardize them, or get to a place where they're more amicable to the buy side's legal counsel. That's one that'll kill you. If you're going through the CRM and you see that there's all these weird approval workflows where it's like, we do a deal, our legal team approves it, and then they send it over to finance and finance approves it, and then it goes over to implementation and the account gets assigned. And it's like, okay, that's too much. It's like, that's all internal, just bureaucracy that's getting in the way of velocity, and that's unacceptable. And it's your job to sniff that stuff out. And there is stuff that you can get ahead of, mostly around like terms, stuff like that. Last one, and this is, it fits in kind of this general cohort, but customer resource constraints for implementation. So this is one where you're thinking more about post-sale activation and like getting users to value as soon as possible, time to value, as it were. And the main thing is preventing risk, or the worst thing that can happen here is like your sales team is absolutely ripping. And this is why it's so hard to grow, right? Because you're going to have to balance and resource stuff up as you move up the growth curve. But it's like sales is ripping. It gets to implementation's understaffed and it's a disaster. And we're not getting any of these clients live and they're all churning. So all this revenue growth that we're looking at is actually just going right out the back end. Poof, bye-bye. We're just spinning in place, running in circles. So it's connected to that. But for what we're talking about here, it's kind of like, what is the burden that we're putting on our customers for implementation? Is that reasonable? Do they have the tooling and kind of the know-how to get it done? And the good news is you can usually engineer your way forward and like reduce the burden. So it's more like, hey, just fire hose us with this stuff. We're going to configure it, structure it, map it, get it to the thing, do the stuff. So and there's a spectrum there where it's kind of like, are you asking them to take substantive action or to review and approve? And ideally, in an implementation context, you want everything to be review and approve. It's like they review it and approve it, but we're not asking them to take any lift, because the more you ask of the customer and assume that this is a hot potato, It's like, hey, we just bought this really great software and everyone's going to love it. And it's like, well, who's going to implement it? And it's like, well, not me, not me, not me, not me, not you, not me, not me, not you. And then it's like, oh boy. Yeah, right.
Do we have sales ops?
It's like, man, this potato's hot as hell and I'm going to hold on to it. So that's just back to kind of understanding, like, and I guess don't fixate your point of view on logo acquisition. Like the sales cycle, when this is a very, I guess, novice mistake where it's like, oh my God, it's like, we just need to win business and everything's great. It's like, no, you got to get it through to activation and then you got to get it to retention, and retaining that revenue and just repeatedly demonstrating value is where the skill set really takes hold. So anyway,
and that is the buyer's journey. That's why we say you have to follow the customer all along the journey, because there's an handoff at every point from each department. Marketing, sales, success, product, finance, it's all just one smooth conversation that all rolls up to the C-suite level. So we're not making arbitrary decisions for the business.
Totally. And like in the simplest sense, it's like, let me just see the implementation welcome packet.
Please.
My God, it's 30 spreadsheet templates and a 12-week timeline, and all the activities are on the client side. Yeah, it's like, all right, we can do some stuff here. So I would say, like, don't get too bummed if you're like, oh my God, it's probably a pretty cool opportunity for transformation and to create value. So you can look at timelines for implementation. You can look at like, oh, here's the welcome packet and it says it's a 4-week timeline, and I'm looking in the CRM and it's a 30-week timeline. It's like, all right, we can tune up a lot of stuff here.
Yeah.
So, and then customer feedback, obviously. So that's obviously, feedback makes the world spin. So any opportunity you can engage with customers on these topics, that's great. And that's a good activity. Yeah, we'll save that for another post. But obviously that first kind of touch point with the customer base to get a handle on the value you're adding. If they had a magic wand, what would they want? Which people use it the most? What was implementation like? Like, you just want feedback loops everywhere. It's like, hey, we're a week into implementation. How are we doing? We just resolved implementation. Cool. You've been with us a year. How are things? Boom, 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 boom. So just be thoughtful. I think probably the macro view here is, what are our feedback loops? Like, what are the critical checkpoints along the customer lifecycle or the buyer journey? And then what's the feedback loop that we've like inserted into that thing so we can get smarter over time?
That's it. That's the common theme. Do you have a feedback loop? How often are you getting in front of the customer to understand how they're feeling and what they're thinking? That's it.
That's it. All right, my dude. That is a wrap. Until next time. For the love of the game. Everybody say a wink to the SaaS gods. That
a wink to the SaaS gods.
All things work out. All right, buddy.
Ooh,
I will catch you later. What's that?
Next week, I get my new headphones, my new mic, my new camera, a new backdrop. Oh yeah. The whole setup's getting upgraded, baby.
I love it. Can't wait to see it. All right, my man. You have a great weekend. Catch you later.
You too. Peace.
Peace.